So my sister, 22 years old, and I, 30 years old, had a falling out with my brother, 40 years old, and his wife, 35 years old, after they would go around telling family members made up awful stories/scenarios about us. There was a big confrontation, and now we don't speak to them. They've always been massive troublemakers. My brother still randomly stops by my parents' house, which is where we live, but it's when we aren't home. Now my mother, 63 years old, has always had a soft spot for him and will prioritize his feelings over ours, even though he treats her really badly. He yells at her, curses at her, and has even stolen from her in the past, but she always just says, "He's my son, I can't be mean like them," and continues allowing this behavior. Yesterday I found out that my brother and sister-in-law are now hosting a party here. I asked my mom why this wasn't brought up before, and why she didn't consider how we would feel and what we were supposed to do while they're here. Now, I don't have enough time to write out all the awful things they said about everyone, but more so about my sister. My sister-in-law would call her awful names behind her back and tell people awful and untrue things about her. I know if my sister is in the same room as my sister-in-law, there will be a big confrontation again. I asked my mother why she hadn't considered this since we live here. I know ultimately it's their home, but we do pay rent and weren't taken into account. There is close family being invited, so how are we supposed to either stay in our rooms or just not be around or leave until the party ends? It's just insane to me that she's okay with them hosting a party here when they've both said the most vile things about my mother as well, my sister-in-law especially. After our confrontation, my sister-in-law said she would never step foot in our house again and wants nothing to do with us. But now that they need something because they don't have a home to host a party in, they come asking my mother, knowing she can't say no to him. I told my mother how this made us feel, and she just made it about herself and how much this affects her. I simply asked why there wasn't an alternative presented, park someone else's house, etc., since it's for their kid, 8 years old. I know my niece isn't at fault, but I truly feel an alternative solution was needed in this case. I again warned her that if they go through with this, knowing my sister, it will not end well. After I expressed how I felt, she literally stayed quiet and said nothing. I'm not sure what to do now. Am I the idiot? Update. Wasn't expecting an update so soon, but this morning, my mom asked to speak to me and my sister, and she actually apologized for not taking our feelings into consideration. Apparently last night, she decided to ask my brother if he had considered what we were supposed to do since we weren't invited to a party being held at our house. I realized I missed this point in my OP. We weren't invited, and he said, "Not my problem." She asked why we couldn't just get together and work things out for the better. I've stated before, I'm fine trying to talk things out because I have nothing to hide. If he's willing to change and make things right, to which he went back to his usual behavior and began saying hurtful things to her. He then told her, "I'm not fixing anything." Deep down, they know they're in the wrong, but it pisses me off to no end that you don't see that. Went on to call us unintelligent, liars, etc., etc. He then threatened to cancel the party, lol, and basically said that she's horrible and ridiculous and is making his wife cry. My mom said she had a moment of clarity and told us, "He's clearly afraid of talking to you two because he'd have to face the truth of all the awful things they did. Why else does he deflect and yell at me every time I've asked him to try and talk things out? If he thinks he's going to continue treating me like this, he's wrong." So she said she ended it by telling him, "All I did was ask you a simple question, and you couldn't give me an answer. If you want to cancel the party, that's on you, but don't try to guilt me into compliance anymore." Now, I know it's not realistic to think she's going to just change overnight, but I am glad she was finally able to stand up for herself and actually take us into consideration for once. I'm sure there is more to come, since it's my brother. As of right now, he said he's cancelling because sister-in-law feels uncomfortable now. But I'll update after the planned party date to see if it actually gets cancelled/moved. Thank you for the advice and kind messages as well. I'm still taking all of it into consideration if nothing ends up actually changing. TLDR, Mom reflected on everything, apologized to sister and me, and asked brother to work things out with us. Brother had a rage fit and tried guilting Mom again and said he's going to cancel the party to make her feel bad. She stood up for herself, and he didn't like that. Not sure if he'll actually cancel or just rage fit. Happy Mom finally thought about us, but we'll update after the actual party date since brother likely to cause trouble by then. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I wish people would decide whether paying rent made you tenants or just family members who gift their parents money on a regular basis. I feel like once you start charging your children rent, you lose the "it's our house, so you need to obey us" card. Maybe it's time for you and your sister to take your rent and do an actual tenancy. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Clear out your valuables and stay somewhere else with your sister. Let them trash your mother's house. It's her house. Tell her that you will start looking for somewhere else to stay. She's going to have to choose. And sorry, but it doesn't seem like it will be you. Now for the update. Hey everyone, back again with another update on the family drama that's been unfolding. So, after my last post, things took an unexpected turn. Remember how my brother threatened to cancel the party? Well, he didn't. Instead, he decided to go through with it, but with a twist that left us all reeling. 2 days before the party, my sister and I were at home when my brother showed up unannounced. This was the first time he'd been to our house since the big blow-up. He asked to talk, just him and me, without our sister. I was wary, but I agreed, hoping maybe we could finally clear the air. During our conversation, he admitted that he had been wrong to spread those stories about us. He looked genuinely remorseful, which was a side of him I hadn't seen in years. He explained that his marriage was on the rocks and that he'd been lashing out at everyone around him. He said he wanted to make amends, starting with the party. Here's where the juicy compromise comes in. He proposed that the party still take place at our house, but with a condition. He wanted my sister and me to attend. Not just as bystanders, but as part of the celebration. He said it would mean a lot to his daughter, our niece, to have her whole family there. I was skeptical, but I could see he was trying, and I thought about how much it would mean to my niece. I talked it over with my sister, who was understandably hesitant. She had been hurt the most by the slander and the name-calling. But after a long heart-to-heart, she agreed to give it a shot for the sake of family peace and our niece's happiness. The day of the party arrived, and it was like walking into the lion's den. Relatives who had heard all sorts of things about us were there, and the tension was thick. But to everyone's surprise, my brother publicly apologized to us in front of the whole family. He admitted to spreading lies and asked for forgiveness. You could have heard a pin drop. The party went on, and it was awkward at first, but as the evening progressed, people started to warm up. Our niece was over the moon to have all her family together, and that made it worth it. But then, my sister-in-law pulled my sister aside. I saw them talking in hushed tones in the corner, and I braced myself for another confrontation. However, what happened next was shocking. My sister-in-law broke down in tears and apologized for everything she had said and done. She confessed that she had been projecting her own insecurities onto my sister and that she was seeking help for her behavior. The rest of the evening was a blur of emotions. There were hugs, tears, and a lot of hard conversations. It wasn't perfect, and there's still a lot to work through, but it was a start. As for my mom, she was stunned by the turn of events. She had been so used to being in the middle of our fights that seeing us come together, even if just for one night, gave her hope. She pulled me aside at the end of the night and thanked me for being open to my brother's request. She said she was proud of how we handled everything. So, that's where we are now. The party didn't end in disaster, and there's a fragile peace in the family. My brother and his wife are in counseling, and my sister is taking things one day at a time with them. As for me, I'm just relieved that the night didn't end in another blow-up. Roommate lies about onion allergy, and I accidentally expose them in front of guests so they freak out and ban me from cooking. But when the truth comes out, tables turn, and ex shows up furious. So I've lived in a house with 4 other roommates for 4 years. We all make meals for the whole household on a regular basis. and while one roommate says he just doesn't like onion powders or seasoning, another has been claiming he is allergic to onion. I have noticed him consume foods I know contain onion or seasoned with onion powder or seasonings, specifically dishes at a restaurant I worked at as a cook, without mentioning this allergy or asking for no onion. Obviously seem to be lying about it. Eye roll. Not going to assume the reason why. I feel that onion is a flavor that is a necessity in so many foods if it calls for it. And since the first roommate doesn't complain, or even seem to have had an issue with my using onion in smaller meals I've made, hadn't mentioned it once. I have resumed using onion in my cooking for the household for almost 2 years now. Last week, we had guests that stayed into dinner time on a night I was cooking and complimented the meal and asked what all was in it. Not thinking, I mentioned onion as an ingredient. The second allergy-faking roommate, after eating 2 servings, suddenly freaks out and starts getting unreasonably angry, acting paranoid like he was going to have some reaction, yelling and accusing me of trying to unalive him. This became a big household fight for the next few hours. Our guests leave awkwardly, and at some point I let it be known just how long I had been using onion in my cooking. So now I have 2 of the 4 other roommates thinking I'm a jerk and not wanting me to cook for the house anymore. Am I the jerk? Update. So I asked this last night specifically because Sundays are usually the day I always cook for the house. I've seen a good 100 or more of the hundreds of replies confirming I'm the jerk. I agree to that on the basis of violating my roommate's trust. And it wasn't cool for me to go against someone's wishes without their knowledge. So I had everyone have a meeting and apologized. I said from now on, I will no longer be cooking group meals, even ones that didn't call for onions, to much disappointment from the roommates. The first roommate that said he just didn't like them admitted to knowing all along, but that my meals were too good. The one other than Faker that had an issue with me continuing to cook meals for us has changed their position, and their objection was based on the trust issue. They have all known he was faking it, but just let it go over the years. Then comes the thing that I'm sure you all want to know. The faker admitted to lying, now knowing he had no support and wouldn't be getting any of my food. He said it started as a way to be mean to his stepmom as a teen and snowballed into a decade plus of lies that he liked the attention from. I, of course, was furious and almost took it out physically on him for creating this issue in our home, had I not been held back when I jumped up after his pitiful explanation. There was some discussion about having him move out, but we came to the conclusion that as punishment for his hissy fit with company in the house, he will be excluded from all group meals for the foreseeable future. Most likely until we decide he has had enough. I'd personally like to see him beg. Thank you for all your time to post comments, especially those that supported my point. Thank you to those that made me realize it wasn't okay to be deceptive. Got a little hard to read at times, but you don't post on here if you don't want honest opinions. Going forward, I will not repeat the actions that led to this. Full transparency on what I use in my cooking, not that there are any other issues expressed so far. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Normally this would be a "you're the idiot" situation, but in this case it's a Nussman. Not the idiot because you've told them foods they're eating have onion in the past. They don't declare any allergy when they're eating out. They have eaten your leftovers, which you've explicitly told them contain onion. In what world could you possibly take their assertion that they either don't like any foods that have onion in, or that they have an allergy to it, when they have demonstrated to you over the course of years that this is not true? Comment 2. You're the idiot. Sneaking ingredients into someone's food without their consent can create trust issues within the household. It breaches the trust and respect that should exist among roommates, making them feel betrayed and unsure about what else might be hidden in their meals. Trust is crucial in shared living spaces, and violating it can strain relationships and lead to resentment. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, back with an update on the whole onion mess that's been cooking up in my house. It's been a rough few days, and let me tell you, things have taken some unexpected turns. First off, let's talk about the roommate who claimed he didn't like onions. Turns out, he's been a bit of a secret keeper himself. Remember how he never complained about my cooking? Well, he confessed that he actually loves onions. He's been enjoying my onion-laden dishes for years, just never said a word because he didn't want to stir the pot. Guess he didn't mind the flavor as much as he minded confrontation. Now onto the faker who's been causing all the drama. After the big blowout last week, things were tense. I mean, you could cut the tension with a knife. But after reading all your comments and seeing the error of my ways, I decided to call a house meeting and apologize for my part in all this. I told them I'd stop cooking group meals altogether, which honestly bummed everyone out. Even the roommate who was mad about the trust issue changed their tune. They admitted they were more upset about the deception than the actual onions. But here's where it gets juicy. The faker, with nowhere left to turn, finally spilled the beans. He admitted to lying about his allergy all these years. It started as a petty way to get back at his stepmom when he was a teenager and just spiraled out of control from there. He liked the attention it got him, and it became a habit he couldn't kick. I was livid. I mean, I nearly lost it and went for him right there in the living room. If it weren't for my other roommates holding me back, I might have done something I'd regret. After some heated discussion, we decided not to kick him out. Instead, we're dishing out a different kind of punishment. He's banned from all group meals for the foreseeable future. Maybe that'll teach him a lesson about honesty and respect. Now, let's rewind a bit and fill in some gaps about our faker roommate. He's always been the center of attention, the life of the party type. But I guess that wasn't enough for him. He needed something more, something that made him stand out. And this fake allergy was his ticket to that. It's kind of sad when you think about it, needing to lie to feel special. As for me, I've been doing some reflecting. I realized that my stubbornness about cooking with onions wasn't just about flavor, it was about control. I liked being the one who decided what went into the meals, and I didn't appreciate being told what I could or couldn't use. But I see now that it's not just about what I want, it's about respecting others, even if they're being less than truthful. In the midst of all this, we've all been learning more about each other than we bargained for. Like how the roommate who changed their mind about me cooking actually used to be a chef before switching careers. They've got some serious cooking skills of their own, which explains why they were so passionate about the trust issue. They know what goes into creating a meal for others. And the roommate who loves onions, he's been dealing with his own issues around confrontation. Turns out, he had a rough time growing up with siblings who would always argue over the smallest things. He learned to keep his head down and his mouth shut to avoid conflict. It's no wonder he never spoke up about his true feelings on onions. So, what's next for us? Well, we're all going to have to adjust to this new dynamic. I'll be cooking for myself for a while, and maybe that's for the best. It'll give me time to think about how I can be a better roommate and friend. And as for the faker, well, he's got a long road ahead to earn back our trust. But just when we thought we had it all figured out, another news dropped. The faker's ex-girlfriend showed up at our door, furious. Apparently, she's allergic to onions for real and had a reaction once because he kissed her after eating one of my meals. He never told her about his fake allergy, and she was none too pleased to find out the truth. So now, not only is he in the doghouse with us, but he's also got an angry ex on his hands. And let me tell you, she's not the kind of person you want to mess with. She's already threatened to tell all their mutual friends about his decade of lies. My wife wants stepdaughter in private school too, so I suggest extra tutoring and part-time job for her, and now we're cutting back but moving forward with a plan that works for us. A bit of backstory regarding this. I, 36-year-old male, have been with my wife, 37-year-old female, for 8 years. Of the 2 children, there is my stepdaughter 13 years old and our daughter 6 years old. We have been discussing sending our daughter to private school for the last few weeks, and it has now boiled over into a full-blown argument. She believes that if we send our daughter to private school, that I should send my stepdaughter to private school, as well as it would be neglecting her otherwise. My wife has majority custody of my stepdaughter and does not receive child support for her as her ex-husband made very poor life choices, which I understand. My wife also has not worked for the entirety of our relationship. I have covered all of my stepdaughter's expenses from day one. After seeing how poorly the public school system has done for my stepdaughter, I brought up and have been insistent on sending our daughter to private school. In my mind, I want to give our daughter the best possible chance in terms of education, which, from what I've seen, does not bode well in public school. Although I love and treat my stepdaughter as my own, I do not feel as though I should be responsible for her education, as I have never been given a say in regards to it from the beginning. I do have the financial means to send both. However, it will be pushing the limits of what I can feasibly do in terms of vacations, birthdays, holidays, etc. for our family. My wife disagrees and says that if I can do it for our daughter, then I must do it for my stepdaughter, regardless of if we have to give up vacations and cut back. Am I the idiot? Edit. After reading through hundreds of comments, I feel it is necessary to clarify and add more info, as I honestly expected this post to not receive the engagement that it has. 1. Pertaining to my wife's ex, he is a raging alcoholic and is in and out of jail. In terms of primary custody, he is allowed 2 days of supervised visitation for a total of 2 hours each of those days each month, if he is not in jail at the time. As for the topic of child support from him, the amount that we would receive would ultimately be inconsequential, and my wife and I decided it was not worth pursuing in the courts. 2. To elaborate and explain the topic of vacations and cutting back. Each year for vacations, my wife and the kids, usually the kids, decide where they would like to go. This generally entails significant travel costs that I save and budget for, and are enjoyed mostly by the kids. Birthdays, holidays, trips are all included in terms of budgeting. I am financially capable of sending both, but with major cutbacks across the board, which will ultimately upset the girls. Sending my biological daughter will require some cutbacks, but spare the girls from losing out on vacations that they look forward to each year. Number 3. On the topic of my stepdaughter's views on private school. To put it bluntly, she is somewhat against it. As many have stated, she does not want to leave her friends. She does, however, feel as though it would help her in terms of schooling. 4. In terms of my relationship with my stepdaughter, she and I both get along incredibly well. As I addressed in a few responses, I do not have any say in regards to her. That falls solely on my wife. My stepdaughter does not enjoy not being unable to ask me if she can do certain things. Both my stepdaughter and I feel as though my wife micromanages our dynamic. 5. Lastly, on the topic of my relationship with my wife and her ability to work, she is perfectly capable of working, to put it mildly. The decision to have her stay at home was based on the girls' ages initially and the difference in what we could earn financially with the time commitment. However, with them being in school now, I have asked on numerous occasions for her to attempt to help the situation for it to fall on deaf ears. Besides a few points of contention, the both of us have a good relationship. Thank you all for your opinions, thoughts, and for your input. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the jerk. Tell your wife that if she gets a full-time job and puts all her income towards her daughter's tuition, you'll cover the difference if needed. Or maybe, if not full-time, whatever is needed to cover the school. Make it clear that if she quits said job without having another lined up, she will have to pull her daughter out and enroll her in public school. I say that as a public school educator and advocate. I don't see how it's fair that she doesn't have a job, brought a kid into the relationship that isn't yours, and doesn't contribute financially at all, even though both kids are school-aged. What does she do all day? Comment 2. Not the jerk. If your wife wants her daughter to attend private school, she should get a job. Younger daughter will be in school. There's less reason for wife to stay home full-time. She also has a father who, while he may have made some bad choices, should be in a better position to pay something now. I do not feel as though I should be responsible for her education, as I have never been given a say in regards to it from the beginning. Please clarify. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. and I wanted to give you an update on the private school saga. Remember how my wife and I were at odds over whether to send both our daughter and my stepdaughter to private school? Well, buckle up, because things took some unexpected turns. First off, let's talk about my stepdaughter. She's been feeling pretty torn about the whole situation. On one hand, she's not thrilled about leaving her friends behind at public school. But on the other, she's starting to see the benefits of a private education, especially after we had a heart-to-heart about her future. She's a smart kid, and she's beginning to understand that sometimes you have to make tough choices for the long run. Now, my wife has been pretty adamant about the girls being treated equally, which I get. But here's the thing. I've been the one footing the bill for everything since day one, and I've never really had a say in my stepdaughter's education. It's always been my wife calling the shots there. So, when I suggested private school for our daughter, I didn't think it would blow up like this. The juicy compromise? Well, after a lot of back and forth, my wife and I finally sat down and had a real talk. No yelling, no accusations, just laying it all out on the table. We both love our girls and want what's best for them, but we also had to be realistic about our finances. Here's what we came up with. We'll send our daughter to private school, and my stepdaughter will stay in public school for now. But, and this is a big but, we're going to get her some extra tutoring to help her keep up, and maybe even get ahead. Plus, we're going to involve her more in decisions about her education, so she feels like she has a say in her own future. Now, this wasn't an easy decision. My wife was worried about it seeming unfair, and I was worried about my stepdaughter feeling left out. But when we explained the plan to the girls, my stepdaughter actually breathed a sigh of relief. She was dreading the idea of starting over at a new school, and the tutoring felt like a good middle ground. As for my wife, she's finally agreed to look for a part-time job. It's not about the money, really. It's about her feeling like she's contributing and taking some of the pressure off me. Plus, it'll give her something to focus on besides managing every little detail of the girls' lives. But wait, there's more. Remember how I mentioned that my wife's ex is pretty much out of the picture? Well, he caught wind of our private school discussions and decided to throw his 2 cents in. He showed up out of the blue, ranting about how we were trying to replace him and how he had rights too. It was a mess. My wife handled it like a champ, though. She stood her ground and made it clear that while he's welcome to be a part of his daughter's life, the decisions about her education are ours to make. It was a tense moment, but it also brought my wife and me closer together. We were a united front, and that felt good. So, where does that leave us? Well, we're moving forward with the plan. Our daughter is excited about starting private school, and my stepdaughter is getting ready for her tutoring sessions. My wife is job hunting, and I'm feeling a little less stressed about the whole situation. It's not a perfect solution, and I'm sure there will be more bumps along the road. But for now, it feels like we've found a balance that works for us. And who knows, maybe this will open up new opportunities for all of us down the line. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.